All right. So Elizabeth Sargent is a woman on a mission to help women change who they are from the inside out and really understanding what makes their bodies work so that they can be in high performance mode, but not burn their bodies out. I am so honored that she's with us today. I'm so grateful that I get to work with her up close and personal. I'm grateful that she gets to work with me up close and personal. It's a beautiful thing we have. Elizabeth, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can share your magic with all of these beautiful humans.
Oh, Suzanne, thank you so much. It is such an honor to be invited onto this stage. You've created such an incredible conference here. I've been tuning in to all the talks so far, and I cannot wait to dive into the others. So thank you so much. And really what I'm excited about bringing to the conversation today is very much around how we as women can empower ourselves when we to another level, when we tune into our bodies, when we understand our hormones, and then really importantly, how we can pass this down onto the next generation. You know, there's so far we've traveled in life, and as we will discuss, there's been some disconnection with self, physical self, with hormones through many of our lives, but that doesn't have to continue. And that's where so much of my passion comes, when we're really looking at what we can do around changing the narrative around health and hormones for that next generation. So thank you. So let me just see, I am set up here. Hello, everyone who is saying hello. I can see your comments coming in. Fabulous. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Liz Sargent. I'm a functional health practitioner and a women's health specialist. So I am based here in the UK, but myself and my team, we work with women all over the world, and we work with individuals and corporations all around bringing women back into alignment and conversation with their body, with their health, and their hormones. Because when we have this beautiful symbiotic relationship with our bodies, we can take ourselves to whole new levels of performance, whole new levels of impact. And that's why we're all here, right? That's why we're here for this conference, you know, future her. Who are we stepping into, and what legacy are we leaving in the world? So being able to bring women back into that conversation is an honor for me, but it's such an important piece of so many women's journeys. So what I want to discuss today is really around, first of all, what is our relationship with health and hormones? And then how can we start engendering change for that next generation and engendering change for ourselves? So I am going to get a little practical as we get on to really empower you to start listening and tuning in and starting to understand what your body is trying to communicate with you all the time. Because when we're able to lean into her whispers, we can make changes, we can make tweaks. And with that, we can go from strength to strength. We can work with her versus against her, or kind of in a mini conflict, which can happen so easily as we move through our lives. So I am extremely passionate about our health. I'm extremely passionate about our energy and our hormonal expression, because basically, when it comes down to it, our energy and our hormones define us. They define who we are as individuals. They shape the world around us, the way we see the world around us, the way we interact with the world around us. They influence the decisions we make on a daily basis. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. You know, on days when you're feeling high vibe, you perhaps make very different decisions, whether that's in business or in your relationships, than the days when you're feeling sluggish, low mood. And as women, as cyclical women, we experience these energy fluctuations. So starting to bring ourselves into alignment with them and understand them is extremely powerful. as we start to see this unravel, it can absolutely affect our ambition, the clarity we have, the type of leadership we project into the world, the relationships we're able to form, the way people are magnetized to us, and then the way that we are magnetized to different people. You know, how social we're feeling on a particular time, how assertive we are, how creative we are, the rapport we're able to bring. This all comes back down to our physical biology, the energy with which we lead ourselves physically as well as emotionally. I know Cynthia was very much talking about that inner energy. This is the same kind of energy, and it comes from within when we understand what's going on with our health and our hormones. So the challenge with this is that at a young age, we become disconnected, very disconnected with our health and our hormones. And often this happens at puberty. And this for me is a real passion area, because this for me, in the long term, when we're thinking about future her, when we're thinking about our legacy, changing this narrative is going to be so different, and it's going to completely change the life course for so many young women. Because at puberty, when we're in our teens, when we're young girls, the societal narrative changes our relationship with self, with our body, and with our hormones. As we move through puberty, the conversation around periods is often a negative narrative. It's one that wants us to hide, not embrace. It's one that makes us embarrassed, not open. And in this pivotal moment, we withdraw from self. And perhaps for those of us who are high achievers, we step more into that doing masculine energy. And if you're a high achiever at school, you can easily bypass that connection with your body and your period by throwing yourself more into schoolwork. And that's definitely something part of my conversation with myself. My journey really went in that direction. So that negative narrative shapes how we move forward. The types of conversations around, oh, don't go near her, it's the time of the month. Or just throw away comments like she's on the rag. I mean, how horrendous is that? These are the types of conversations that need to be changing. These are the types of conversations we need to be having with our daughters, with our sons, with our partners. These conversations need to stop, and we need to be changing the narrative. We need to be empowering our daughters with some of the information that I'm going to be sharing today, but also empowering ourselves with that first. Because as we become disconnected, we then continue on through our 20s, into our 30s, completely somewhat ignoring that we have a monthly cycle. Often we're put on the pill at a young age if we're experiencing symptoms. Yes, as a teen, our period will be clunky. You know, the communication channels between our brain and our ovaries are still finding their groove. It's going to be uncomfortable. But there's things we can do and ways we can manage that. But quite often we're just dulled. Pop it on the pill, pop you, pop her, in my case, on the pill. We don't need to deal with that. We don't need to feel that. So we move through our 20s and 30s driving, achieving amazing things, exceeding expectation, living life to the full, but not connected with self. And what we see is as that progresses, symptoms, our body talks louder. PMS starts to happen, low mood, anxiety, heavy periods, painful periods, acne, which was a huge one for me. They start to pop up and they start to get louder. Now, PMS ladies, all of those symptoms that I just talked about are common. I think we know a lot. Put your hands up if you experience any of those symptoms. They are super common, but they are not biologically normal. We should not be experiencing any of those symptoms. And when we start to tune in, these symptoms, our body is ready to release these symptoms. These symptoms are just an incredible barometer of health. You know, we have this beautiful 28-day rhythm that tells us when things are out of tune. So we can start to tune in and make changes. But we continue and we ignore them. And as we move through life, they get louder. And like in my case, they get super loud. We have a burnout situation, we have infertility, and then for a lot of women, we move into perimenopause, and that becomes a whole story. But it doesn't have to be that way, because as we're moving into our 30s and our 40s, we're at the prime of our career. We're at the prime of our businesses, our leadership positions. This is the time when we should be thriving, completely connected, confident from within our body. Not confident by putting on a power suit, confident from within. I've got me from within. Now, as you can see, I'm super passionate about this because so much of my journey and why I am here today, why I'm doing what I'm doing, comes from my journey with energy and with hormones. So I grew up in the Great British countryside on a farm. I was a high achiever at school, got all the A grades, went to university, and I was all around exceeding expectations. I was very much in that dominant masculine energy at quite a young age. I had acne as a teenager and was put on the pill. At 17, I had glandular fever, which I think might be called mono in the US. I need to check that. So I think it might be called mono in the US. So you're kind of like really fatigued for about 6 months. Anyone knows what that's called in the US? Drop it in the chat. So I was fatigued for at least 6 months, but it went on for years, you know, the fatigue. And then at 18, I lost my father and went to university the next week. And this combination of events really defined, they were a pivotal moment for me, because the disconnection from my periods and going on the pill when I was suffering with horrendous acne, the glandular fever and the energy fatigue that I experienced with that, and then the emotional shutdown after losing my father, moving to university, you know, moving out from home to another city to go to university, was a pivotal moment because it taught me how to completely disconnect with myself physically and myself emotionally. You know, in the great British way, just stay calm and carry on. That is what I embraced. And I did. I got the corporate job. I was on the graduate scheme. I went and lived in London. I lived the best life. I bought my flat in London. I had the blue soft top sports car, which I'd been dreaming about since I was about 12, little MX-5, which I always used to call my go-kart. So I was pootling around London in my little blue MX-5, roof down, hair flying, loving life. I then moved to Chicago, really on the corporate ladder. I was emotionally stable. I had it all together. But I was extremely disconnected. And soon it started to unravel. And one of the little inklings that kind of came through that showed that it was going to unravel soon was I had this proud moment, or there was various proud moments. It was like, I've not cried for years. I'm very emotionally stable. I just pooter along. And it was true. I was kind of emotionally stable in the fact that I didn't get super excited and I didn't get sad. But really in this emotional stability, I was avoiding the sadness. I was keeping it dulled down, that unresolved grief. And if any of you have seen the film The Notebook, when I was living in Chicago, I hadn't heard of The Notebook until I moved to Chicago. And all my US friends were going, oh my God, you've not seen The Notebook. Oh my gosh, well, Ryan Gosling is a dream. I hadn't even heard of Ryan Gosling. He is a dream. You must watch The Notebook. I was like, okay. Friday night, get myself set up with the popcorn and The Notebook in my little apartment, and settled on down. Well, you've seen The Notebook. Probably, I think, within 5 minutes, clocked what was going on here. Horrendous, full on crying for the entire film. After the film, it was like unleashing Pandora's box. The next day we were going snowboarding just north of Chicago, and I turned up and my face was just this big puffy redness, and my friends like, oh, are you okay, Liz? Like, yeah, I am. I watched The Notebook, and they're like, oh yes. So I had been so dominant in that masculine energy, in that driving energy. I had completely become so disconnected with my physical biological self, my emotional self, and my physical self, my human being. And in that, over time, as this then started to unravel in my 30s, it slowly crept in with various symptoms. So at first it was fatigue, increasing fatigue, that lack of get up and go, increasing low mood, anxiety, infertility. First of all, my periods start to get lighter. Then I didn't have any periods anymore. And then finally, what was then called adrenal fatigue, burnout. And for me, this was at a time when I was studying my functional medicine and functional nutrition. I was writing dissertations, and I couldn't think straight. I couldn't make decisions. I would have so much self-doubt that would just creep in out of nowhere. You know, historically, I was a very positive person, very optimistic, but my whole demeanor changed. And that's what I see in so many of the women that I work with, is as we move through life in that dominant masculine energy, which is amazing at getting things done, but it needs to be in balance with the feminine. It needs to be in balance with the connection with self, of the nurturing. But when we have the leading with the dominant masculine energy, we lead ourselves to a space of disconnection. And when we are wanting to shape the world we live in, leave our legacy, we need to be switched back on. We need to connect back to our hormones so we can turn up in a confident leadership position, so we can turn up switched on, getting new ideas, being inspired, which is really hard when we're living with symptoms that have been manifested from that negative energy. Negative, like dominant, not negative energy, a dominant energy. So I soon realized that I had been moving through life effectively wearing a wetsuit. And this dawned on me probably about 2 years ago now. And I was on holiday in the UK with my family. We were on the south coast in a place called Devon, this lovely cove. And we had an apartment overlooking the cove. And the kids at the time, I think, were 3 and 5. So they were quite young at the time. And we would go in the water and we'd go swimming. Now, if you've been on holiday in the UK, a lot of people go in the water in wetsuits. It's not the Caribbean, okay? So we all had a wetsuit. The kids definitely had wetsuits. They would not be in the water very long without a wetsuit. So we all put on the wetsuits. Now, if you've ever tried to put on a wetsuit, it is one of the most horrendous things I think we have to do. You're putting it on over your legs. You're pulling it up. It's bending back the skin and your nails are creeping and you're like pulling it up and you get to your thighs and you're like jumping around. And finally you get it up and you put it on your arms. Oh, and then suddenly you're zipped up. I'm in my wetsuit. Fabulous. Let's go have fun, kids. So we're there wandering down to the cove, and in the UK, that, you know, it's not nice flat beaches. You've got to go down a cliff to get there. We're going waddling down. Kids are excited, and all I could think about was being in this wetsuit. All I was thinking about is how soon can I get this wetsuit off that is so restrictive, so hot. I just couldn't be there present in the moment. When we got into the water, the kids were having such a great time, but I wasn't free. I couldn't move my arms. I just wasn't present there in the moment. So the next day I was like, I'm not going to go in the water with a wetsuit on today. Everyone looked at me. You sure? A little bit of self-doubt came in. It's like, oh, I'm going to ruin the playtime. But yes, I can do this. It's fine. They're like, yay, go mummy. I'm like, so we go down. I'm just there in my swimming costume. The kids all wetsuited up. They're like, go mummy, go mummy. Go into the water. Oh, a little bit chilly. But I'm doing this. It can't be that bad. I do one step after another, and then I dive and glide in. Yeah, it's cold, but it's exhilarating. I can feel every hair on my arm prick up. I can feel the water brush over my body. The air bubbles on my arms just tickle. I can feel the seaweed against my legs. I can move my arms. I have full flexibility. I can swim and feel alive in the moment. And I can feel the currents, the cold patches, the warm patches. I was there alive in that moment with the kids. And for the first time on our holiday, swimming in the sea, I could hear their laughter. I could see their smiles. I could see their joy, and I could be them with their joy. And we stayed in the water so much longer than we had done on the other days. And the most beautiful thing was, on that particular day, a sea lion came in and played with us. We were jumping on and off the paddleboard, and a sea lion came in and was swimming around while we were playing. It's the most precious memory. That moment of taking off my wetsuit and being fully alive in that moment. And then as we went home, I just really reflected in that moment. And it made me think back to the time when I had the adrenal dysfunction. And it made me think back to the time when I had the hormone imbalances. And so many of the women that come and work with me, how when we are disconnected with our bodies, when we are moving through life with these hormone imbalances, whether it's PMS, whether it's adrenal dysfunction, burnout, or other conditions, we're living dulled, we're living restricted. And that's what I want to change for us. That's what I want to change for the women, for those of you here listening now, and for the women I work with, but really for the next generation. So we don't have to keep repeating this cycle of disconnection with body, of disconnection with hormones, of muscling through. You know, the more I muscled through, the tighter the wetsuit got. So many of my body's whispers were coming to me years earlier. But because I was so disconnected and focused on doing and achieving, I didn't hear them. I didn't have time to hear them until my body made me have time to hear them, until I didn't have a choice but to stop. I don't want other women to get to that point because it's completely unnecessary. As soon as we start tuning in, we can make significant changes. Our body heals really, really quickly. So that's what I want to share with you today, is the piece around that attunement and how we can start tuning into our body and her whispers. So this next piece, what I'm going to share now, is going to get a little sciencey. It's also going to be a little bit practical, because this is one of the first pieces I did on my recovery. Now, luckily for me, I was studying functional medicine at the time, and I was able to quickly see that what I was experiencing was, at the time, adrenal fatigue. Now it's called adrenal dysfunction. And I was then able to take steps to do that. Had I not been studying functional medicine at that point, I probably would have been diagnosed with depression, infertility, and then I'm pretty confident it would have moved into various autoimmune conditions and hypothyroidism. So when we start listening, we can start unraveling. We can start tuning in and coming back into conversation with ourselves. So what I'm going to share now is I'm going to talk to those of you who are cycling, but what I'm talking about is very relevant to those of you who aren't cycling. So in the chat, and I'm going to have a little look here in the chat. Oh, happens. Here we go. Yes, fabulous. I'd love to know who here is cycling and who of you are not cycling at the moment. You may be on some sort of hormonal contraception that's like the Mirena coil, so you're not necessarily cycling, but you'll have an underlying rhythm still, or you may be perimenopausal or menopausal. Give me a flavor of where you're at, because what I'm going to take you through now is a way to tune in to your natural energetic rhythms by understanding how they move as we flex through our month. So I'm just looking at your here at the moment, not at the moment, postmenopausal. Yes, perimenopausal, fabulous. And I know, Suzanne, you still have this energetic rhythm underlying. We've spoken about that before, don't you? Fabulous. Cycling. Okay, amazing. We have, oh, Hannah's here. Hi, Hannah. Hannah's on my team. How exciting, Hannah. It's a nice surprise. So we are so I will take us through what this looks like, but it will apply to both cycling and non-cycling women, because what I want you to start doing is very much start tuning to how you feel. So if you're perimenopausal, you will still have an underlying rhythm, but quite often, because we've been so driven, we've not necessarily been able to listen and attune to that rhythm. If you are here and you're not biologically female, you may be a partner of one of the wonderful women we have here in the conference. This is also going to be really helpful for you to tune into. And we want our partners to understand our natural rhythm, our energy ebbs and flows, so they can help empower us, but also so they can have conversations with their daughters, with their nieces, with the next generation. So our cycle, well, as women, we're really gifted because we have a 24-hour cycle and we have a 28-day cycle. Actually, the average length is 29 days, but the textbooks, they say 28. So we have this incredible ability on a daily basis to experience our circadian rhythm and our energy ebbs and flows throughout the day. And we experience our infradian rhythm, our energy ebbs and flows throughout the month. And what's remarkable is these cycles interact with each other. So for me, when I was in that dominant masculine energy, I was disrupting my 24-hour cycle, my circadian rhythm. And as I disrupt that with that heightened stress, with that heightened anxiety, with the emotional suppression, my body was very intelligently adapting and changing the way my 28-day cycle was functioning, the hormonal balance. So they dance really closely together. So when we look at our 28-day cycle, two of the main hormones that are involved are estrogen and progesterone. And as we move through our cycle, the changes in these two hormones, as well as other hormones, so cortisol plays a really big role, particularly on a 24-hour stage, they influence our immune system, our gut, who experiences changes in their gut and their bowel movements at different times in the month. It shapes our connection with self. Are there times of the month when you feel super confident and outgoing? Are there times of the month when you kind of lose a bit of self-belief. It changes our ability to exercise efficiently. Once we tune into these rhythms, we can become significantly more efficient at the way we exercise and the types of exercise we do. As our body changes the way it utilizes protein and utilizes carbohydrate as fuel at different times in the month. Energetically, you experience ebbs and you will experience flows. Stress, the way our body is able to handle stress and the way we feel with regards to our stress resilient changes. In the second half of our cycle, we have slightly raised cortisol levels, which can, for some women, when we have these imbalances, create that increased anxiety, create that kind of flighty type feeling. Our metabolism changes. So for anyone who has tried to diet and tried to be restrictive all month long, we're constantly working against ourselves. Our calorific need increases in the second half of our cycle. So what I'm going to do now is hopefully just share something. I'm going to be very quickly geeky from a science perspective. Let me share my screen here. There we go. Here. So a little bit geeky, but this is our cycle. So you see here, day 1 is the first day of our bleed, and that's our menstrual phase. We then move through into our follicular phase. We have ovulation in the middle of the cycle, and we have our luteal phase, which is the longer phase. That's when a lot of women who we have hormonal imbalances will be experiencing those symptoms. So as you can see here, we have a rise in estrogen in the first half of our month. It falls at ovulation, and then we have a rise in progesterone. So it's the dance of these hormones that influence all these other systems in our body. And it's also the dance in these hormones that we can tap into to move with our energetic ebbs and flows, to improve our productivity or our exercise efficiency, to optimize our metabolism and manage our stress resilience. So what I've put over here in those different phases are really lovely ways to talk about the different phases. So we have our winter, which is our menstrual phase. So this is really a time from an energetic perspective to be reflecting, nesting. It might be a time when we go a little more inwards naturally. In our spring, as estrogen rises, we find we have a natural rise in energy. This is often a time when we might be feeling more creative. We might start to feel a little more outgoing and social. And then we enter our summer, like where we are in the UK at the moment. The sun is out. We're feeling outgoing. We're feeling flirty. We're at our most active and our energetic high. For some women, if we have hormonal imbalances, if we have estrogen dominance, something called estrogen dominance going on, this could be a time where you do feel slightly flighty or heightened anxiety, and you may experience some symptoms such as tender boobs. And then we go into our autumn. And our autumn, the first of our half of our autumn, quite often we may still have many of those summer type feelings. And then as we move through into the last part of our autumn, we may begin to slow down. And this is where it becomes quite unique, because when we have hormonal imbalances, it's our autumn phase where a lot of women may slow right down. This is where the mood changes come in. This might be when anxiety heightens. This could be then when some of those period pains, heavy periods, acne starts to flare. But at the same time, progesterone is actually a very calming hormone. So when we have balance, this time of the month actually should be a time when we can reflect and when we can really start to be within ourselves, but within our inner confidence. So what I want to do now, let me stop sharing so I can see you all again. Okay. So when we think about those different phases, we can start to optimize how we lead ourselves through different times of the month. Now, for those of you who aren't cycling, what I would love you to do is think about those phases as I move through this next section, but map them onto a moon cycle. So you can either pick day one as a full moon or a half moon. It doesn't matter which way you go. And you map it on a moon cycle, because what we have here, when we start to attune and align to our cycles, when we start to listen to our bodies, we have this beautiful natural monthly cadence to our world. And we can bring this into our workplace. We can bring this into our social life. We can bring this into our relationships. And perhaps for the first time, like it was for me about 7 years ago now, the first time we've even started to take a moment to listen to what feels good for us at different times of our cycle. So as we move through into our spring, something I see a lot that happens is that's when we get a lot of inspiration. That's a time when we're thinking, oh, I'm going to launch a new product, or I'm going to launch a new program. I've got this amazing idea. I'm going to speak to the board, or I'm going to organize a social event. Right. When can we do it? Yes, I'm going to do it 2 weeks time, because by then I just like to put it together and launch it, or I'll have got my proposal together. We've got a board meeting in two weeks time. Let's do it then. Or I'm going to get my friends together. What's going to be happening in 2 weeks time? Well, in 2 weeks time from your spring, you're going to be in your late autumn. You may be in your winter phase. And that's a time when you probably won't feel like being out there, presenting in front of the board, bringing people into your program, launching your products, or really being the hostess with the mostess. That's a time when you'd want to be reflecting, really kind of just going inwards, and you've set this amazing event up, and then you're like, what's wrong with me? Oh, actually, this idea isn't so good anymore. Oh, I can't launch. I always burn out in launches. What is wrong? Why is having my own business? Is it right for me? All the self-doubt starts to come in, and we can be in this cycle for years. And I'm sure many of you may, if that sounds familiar, give me some thumbs up, because I see this time and time again. But all we need to do is start understanding, what is my natural energetic cadence? When I'm in my spring and I have these great ideas, all I need to do is wait 3 weeks, wait 4 weeks. Then I'll be back in my spring. Then I'll be in my summer. Oh my goodness, the board is not going to know what's hit them, because this idea is going to change the trajectory of our company. My launch is going to be amazing, because I'm back in my spring and my summer, and we start in 1 week, and I am here turning up every day, inspiring people to come in to my program. Or I'm the hostess with the mostess, spinning the plates, serving the drinks, having the conversations, loving the event. All we needed to do to change our experience of our world, of our life, is wait 2 more weeks. So you can start to see the power of understanding this beautiful cadence, this beautiful energy ebb and flow. And when we start getting this understanding, we can start tapping into some of the other things. When we are in our winter, both our hormone levels are at their lowest. At that point, both hemispheres of our brain can communicate more efficiently with each other. So our intuition is often higher at this point. So if you do a lot of journaling, and at that particular time of the month, the same thoughts come up, or the same ideas came up, month after month, start to trust them. That's your intuition. And as you move through, you may see in the autumn time, that's your time for doing admin, tucking and tying, doing the decluttering, which in your spring, if you're kind of, doing accounts or whatever it is that you have to do, those sort of admin roles that you kind of have to do and you can't get someone else to do, and it's really hard work, Perhaps doing them in your spring isn't the right time. But when progesterone is highest, for you, that might be a job for your autumn. So you can really start to ebb and flow with your productivity, the way you journal, the way you lead yourself, the conversations you have, how you navigate tricky times in relationships, how you're able to be playful with your kids or lead your teams. You know, starting to understand this for those of us who lead teams is extremely powerful. Now, I've had women work with me who have then gone back and within their teams have discussed how our biochemistry changes at different times of the month, how they as a team can work more efficiently. You know, where are we all in our cycles? Who is in their most creative phase? Who is in their most outgoing phase? Who's going to present? Who's going to be analytical at this particular point? So as a team, we can move, we can achieve greater achievements because we are aligned with ourselves. Our confidence is coming from within. And I think that's one of the things when we start to tap into this is that confidence piece. Because as we've been going through life in that dominant masculine energy, so much of our confidence is a bravado. So much of our confidence is more like an armor. We put on our power suit and we go into environments. Yeah, I've got this. But that type of confidence, that armor that we put on is exhausting to hold. And it's fickle. When we close the door, that type of confidence sheds away. That type of confidence, as we just saw, may really start to crumble at certain times of the month. But when we start to tune into our body, when we listen to her whispers, when we understand her natural ebbs and flows, when we work with her, not against her, we achieve the confidence, the true confidence as leaders that we desire, the confidence that really comes from within, the confidence of, I've got me, I know me, this is me, and this is how I lead myself. And in that's when we get to be really powerful. That's when we get to leave our legacy. And that is how we can really support our girls. You know, understanding, giving them the power to understand their cycles. You know, this is just one tiny little piece that we touched on today, but I think by helping women understand our natural ebbs and flows, what's actually happening at different parts of our cycle, so we can start talking to the next generation, we can start bringing them up with that inner confidence, with the true, deep confidence from within, an energy that will radiate. And with that confidence, you know, that's the sort of confidence that when we lead ourselves for a room, that people are attracted to. That's the confidence people will start reflecting to us. You know, if we're going in with the bravado and the armor, people put up their armor. They've got their act. And we're all going around with our acts on. We're never actually truly connecting. If you're going in from a confidence that radiates from within, they reflect that back to you. They let down that bravado, they let down that armor, and that's when we get true connection. And that's then when we get that ripple effect with what we truly desire to achieve in the world. So I just want to leave you here today just with that thought of what can we achieve as individuals when we start having this awareness. If you are cycling, start to tune into this. If you are perimenopausal, still tune into this. Start to understand what are the ebbs and flows on a daily basis. Listen to how your energy changes, your mood, your digestion. When do you catch colds? Start to understand what is happening, because I bet you will still have fluctuations going on. And then if you're menopausal or you're not currently cycling, use a moon cycle, because you can apply this beautiful cadence, this beautiful ability to have a winter where you reflect and you go inwards and you tap into your intuition. You have a spring in each month where you are more creative. You have a summer and you have an autumn. It creates beautiful inner seasons within our year. It's very, very powerful, and we can get very clever at how we lead ourselves from this space. So I just want to urge you all just to start tuning in. And if you have daughters, if you have nieces, if you have friends with young women, start having these conversations. Start supporting the next generation and encouraging them to trust and to listen to their inner hormones and inner self. So thank you so much. I think Suzanne might be coming back on for a chat. What I would love to do for any of you who would like to learn more and go deeper into some of the things that I've touched today, I've put together a lovely little guide called Flow. So it is set up for women who are cycling and those of you who are not cycling, and it goes into what I talked today and gives so many gorgeous journaling prompts and steps that you can take to really tune into that. So if you would like the guide, just write Flow below, and then I can drop you the link. And the other thing that I have done, which Suzanne actually doesn't know about, is I would absolutely love to offer, I've put together a gorgeous offer of some women's health readings for those of you who would just like to take a bit of time and understand kind of what's going on in a bit more detail with your hormones, with your health, and we can spend some time together, go into that. I've got a really, a beautiful rate for those of you at the conference. Obviously there's 500 of you, so there will be limited numbers, or I can just, be doing that for the rest of time. But if you would like to learn a little bit more of that, perhaps drop reading below, and I can just get in touch. I'll drop you a DM or something. So thank you.
Beautiful. And you can also find Elizabeth on @WellNourished_Club on Instagram. You can look at her bio, which is in the guides. If you're catching this on replay, I'm sure Elizabeth will be in here looking for your comments, but you can always DM any of the speakers. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about the collaboration that we've put together. I would love for you to just riff for a second. One of the things that I said to all the speakers when we were doing our prep, and I talked about this in the opening last night, is when we imagine a world, this parallel universe where women were at the table, when the decisions were made about how culture and society and business and education work, one of my dreams is that women would have said, hey, by the way, I cycle every 28 days or so, and like my brain doesn't work as well on a particular day of the month, and we should construct a business so that if a woman's having that day, she can take the day off if she needs to or wants to and not be penalized. One of the things that drives me nuts, and this is very against the Tao Te Ching, which is a big part of the study of my life and the study of Dare Human, is the idea that we are one with nature. And we've been suppressing our nature by saying things like, well, I mean, I feel like crap today. My cramps are off the charts. My head is foggy, but I got to go to that meeting. I got to show up and I got to just do it. And I'm going to struggle through it, and I'm going to push through it, and I'm going to masculine energy my way through it. So I'm wondering, in a world that you imagine, Liz, what else would we be building into our systems to really listen to women and allow them to be in this beautiful seasons during the month? I've never heard you talk about that. We've been working together for almost a year now on my own hormonal journey and my own health stuff. And I'm one of Liz's Lux Health clients, which is her health concierge service. It's amazing. And the thing is, it's like, we have to fit ourselves. It's like we're stars. And we have to fit ourselves into a round hole. It's like a star peg in a round hole. And when you put yourself into that round hole, you got to cut off an arm, another arm, a leg, and a leg. And now you can fit through the hole, the round hole. But oh my God, I am not whole when I do that. How do we make ourselves more whole at work? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, I think one of the key things is starting to open up those conversations. So in in a lot of the work that I'm doing with corporations, we have, particularly in the UK, there's a lot of talk around menopause, perimenopause, supporting women going through that is a really hot topic. And I think there's a lot of talk and awareness around that, but it's actually the doing to change the physical self. You know, we can talk about it, but actually it's starting to put things in place in the workplace that allows women to access information, access resources, access expertise that can help them actually listen to their bodies and understand what they're saying, but also doing it earlier. So obviously I'm talking about our girls, but actually if we're supporting women in their 20s and 30s with menstrual health, understanding what we've talked about today, understanding that PMS is common but not normal, and that our bodies, often it's just small tweaks that we need to do to lift so many of those symptoms. It will help us from a resilience perspective as we move through organizations. So I think one of the key things is just starting to have those conversations, being open, you know.
The word period at work. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on my period. Oh my God, I'm waiting for that day.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you look at the data of women that take time off because of their periods, or are present but not actually there. They're, you know, they've got things going on, they're not actually there in the office. They're kind of like there in person but not in soul. It's staggering numbers, but only 20% of people actually say that that's the reason why either they're unwell or they're just not functioning. And if we were more honest, we'd be able to have these conversations and would be able to get the help where the help is needed. And I think, yeah, in my world, it would be a world where these conversations are normal in corporations, and there would be resources available. And like you say, you know, if you're not having a great day, work from home. Be able to reschedule a meeting, you know, fine, you know, if you've got a meeting set up, even if it's a fairly important meeting, if you're not going to be able to turn up in your best and deliver it, like, let's just put it back a week. Obviously, you know, there'll be some resistance to that, but it's amazing. And some of my my corporate clients who've got very significant leadership roles, at the beginning, they're like, oh, well, I couldn't schedule my work calendar around my cycle. Like, well, actually, you can. Actually, when you start getting strategic with it, you can. And it's just that little challenge of what is the norm, because we've had decades of the norm being very non-female centric, you know, with regards to how it's led. But actually challenge that, and suddenly they sort of start to see that is possible. So anyone who challenges me, who says, well, it's not possible, I can't possibly schedule my calendar around my cycle, well, I can now challenge them back, because I work with significant, you know, leaders in big corporations, and those that run, if we run our own business, it's often a little easier, but in significant organizations who completely cycle align their corporate calendar, and it's been revolutionary for them.
So important. And then something you said at the beginning, which I think is crucial, is like, men like to joke about women. You said on the rag. I think I said the same thing last night in the opening. It's like, I remember when I was a kid. Oh, how did it go? You can tell by the smell that she isn't feeling well when the end of the month comes along. And this was stuff that boys sang, and it was just horrible. And it made us ashamed of the fact that we cycle, except for, you know, they do get us pregnant, and we do give birth to everything on the planet. And so that is human. And the fact that it's been so stigmatized, 51% of the population cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. And you told me that little rhyme last week, and I was horrified because I hadn't heard that before. But that's where we need to be having the conversations, you know, with our partners, with our sons, have really open conversations in these areas. And I had a story, one of my, I was on a workshop, I was doing a workshop with mums of teen girls to help support them, support their daughters more closely throughout their cycles. And one of them said that her daughter was on a bus coming home from school, and she had bled through her skirt, and she had got off the bus, and this older boy had come up to her and said, "Oh, would you like my jumper? You've it looks like you started your period." And the little girl was embarrassed, but it was the most beautiful moment in the fact that this boy saw what had happened and had gone and given this girl his jumper to put round her waist, so so she wouldn't feel embarrassed.
Jumper or sweater for those Americans who don't know what it is. Yeah.
But that's the that they're the conversations. That little boy is obviously in a family who had daughters or had sisters, and he saw that, and he was really empathetic and was able to support. And that is the sort of culture we want to be changing, and we want to be standing up for those sorts of rhymes and that kind of narrative. We need to be standing up and putting them out.
So powerful, so important. Thank you so much, Liz, for being here, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your understanding of the energetics of our hormonal cycles. I think that most of us think about it as a pain in the neck. I remember when I was a kid, I said to my mom, it is not fair that we have to bleed once a month for 5 days or 7 days. It's like, wait, I'm going to spend 25% of my adult life bleeding. Are you kidding me? And my mom said to me, classic woman from a different generation, well, would you prefer to shave every day? Like, you have to shave, would you like to shave your face every day? And I thought, well, you can choose not to shave your face, but you can't choose not to bleed. Like, it's not an option. So I think bringing these conversations, giving words to things that normally people don't, polite company doesn't talk about, is really important. And also, I just want to say personally, Liz's work goes way beyond just women's hormonal cycles. It goes very deep into detoxification strategies when you've been exposed to pesticides and plastics and mold and all kinds of toxins your whole life. Her work goes very deep in that as well. So thank you for sharing this piece of your work and your heart. I just adore you, and I'm so grateful that you could be here today.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you.
Mwah.